word in this picture is it trying to look, and it doesn't work. Believe me, I thought of it, but it's whatever. Yeah.
CVS seeks primary doctors.
That's the second one. I usually do ignore.
What's that?
The healthcare strategy for this week. I'm just looking at it right now.
Yeah, is there anything like different about it?
No, it's the usual stuff. It's just for the weekly topic. It's 4 articles.
Oh.
Yeah. Then it's the 5th one for the like the big idea. Then the textbook work, and then the discussion.
Yes, it's too much. Yeah.
I usually do.
I still like it more than the last one though. I still like this a lot more than the what was it, 1,000? Like every week, something like that.
Yeah, 750.
750. That was the 2 750s.
I usually do the chapter concepts first, then I do the weekly discussion. Because then I don't have to like think as hard about it because I've already read the book.
Yeah, and do you read the whole chapter? Because I think that's right. Yeah.
I try to, but it's something.
I always start off the semester like that. I always say, this is the semester that I'm actually gonna like read, and then it gets down to like the nitty gritty in like all of these classes.
Yeah,
there ain't no freaking time in the day.
No time. Exactly. But the good thing is that the last week there are no articles in this course.
Is it actually?
Yeah. So
Well, no, it
has the article for the HBR.
You're right. It's only one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're almost there. Like 2 more weeks and the third
This week and next week, and then that's it. Yeah.
That's why I like the elective classes. They're like half a semester and then freaking done.
No, I agree.
I might just try to bang that out during the Thanksgiving break then, honestly.
Yeah. What is it? Is it like, do we actually have a case study in this class?
No case study.
No, it's just another
Just articles and
discussion, chapter concept like all the other weeks, and then the Harvard Business Review. That's it. No, none of the
And it's gonna
topic.
It's gonna be due Friday, not Sunday as usual. So
Yeah, but again, if I get it done the week before, then it won't matter.
We'll have the whole Thanksgiving week.
Exactly.
I might hammer out like the rest of this class over Thanksgiving.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Yeah.
Like just be that way I don't have to worry about those responses as the people.
Well, actually, no, because I think you still have to do the discussion post responses after like the Wednesday.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. That's all I have to worry about.
But I don't know. It's just frustrating because like if I'm gonna respond when I can respond, let me respond when I want to respond. Well, I understand where he's coming from.
I get it. But in the same sense, it's like if the discussion thread format was better, then it wouldn't even freaking matter, right? Because like the old Moodle last year, you could respond whatever you want, and you get the initial post, and then you get like the response right here.
What I expected it to be.
Yeah, no. But
and instead, it looks like freaking smashed ass.
The problem is the way it's also set up, because instead of posting your own reply, you have to reply to his question. So it ends up in one big chain. But the problem is because it's one big chain, I get emails every day throughout the week because someone responded to this chain to submit their answers.
Yeah.
And they're not even responding to me. It's just responding to the overall question. Like, this is fantastic.
So
I wanted my email to be a spam folder. Thank you.
But you always have the unsubscribe option.
But I have to unsubscribe every week from every single one.
Yeah.
It's just infuriating.
Yeah.
Well, it's one click.
Yeah, it's one click. Yeah, but again, it's just frustrating. Just because there's an easy solution doesn't mean that there shouldn't need to be a solution. It's the principle. It's the principle of it. Thank you.
Just tell me you stick your dad on.
It was. It meant to change it. It's not anymore.
How long did your leadership paper end up being?
Like the beginning of the semester this weekend.
It's like 5.5 pages.
Mine was 7, but I had a title page, so.
Yeah.
Because all we have is like
What about you?
project.
Mine was 11.
Like originally,
Oh,
it was
Jesus.
supposed to be like part
I got
of
after
our
it.
first draft.
Punched it out
this
yesterday, though.
weekend, and then
Yeah.
Double space?
And
Yeah.
MBA format, so it's really 5. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah.
So yours was like, what,
Yeah.
14?
Because even I went to go take the quiz yesterday, and there were 2 quizzes due Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah, same.
And I was like, oh,
Definitely didn't mention.
yeah.
Okay.
I feel like
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's gonna be like a over Thanksgiving break. I'm probably gonna
Yeah,
age.
no, exactly.
All right, good. That's gonna be his grading rubric.
Yeah,
Is just
no, I was like, perfect.
I felt,
All right,
like,
done.
I felt like such a douche talking about myself for 6 pages. I felt like the biggest douche ever. I was like, I really don't want to talk about
I'm very
myself
good
like
at this, I'm very good.
I did this so well. Okay.
well, but the funny thing is, I took a different angle on it, and I just said because all of my own personal responses were lower than what all of my people that I submitted it to gave. So all I said was just, man, I like this is mostly going to be just a self-perception issue that I need to address. Instead of I'm good at this, I tackled it as I'm probably good at this because everyone's saying I am. I just need to actually see what they're seeing. I just need to get a better prescription on my glasses, and that'll fix it.
Yeah, I mentioned both things. Yeah.
And then what's it? We next week, and that's it for leadership, right?
Actually, there's the Disney case, but
There's the case, but we're not going in.
we don't.
Next,
We have next
week
week.
is our last like in-person
and then that's it.
class.
Yeah, it's due the 4th of December.
Yeah.
Dude, during Thanksgiving, I'm getting all this crap done. I'm like, I'm not playing around. I'm just gonna freaking sit down and get after it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Freaking earbuds in, nothing going out.
almost time. We're getting there. It's awfully chilled. Hope you all are doing well. Yeah? All right. Well, I'm sure others will maybe join us as we go. Let's get started. Let's see how it goes. Hey, come on in. Come on in. All right. This is week 14. Or is it week 14 or 13? I can't remember. We're getting there, right? There's light at the end of the tunnel.
Yes.
Classes are starting to sort of settle and come to a conclusion. So that's good. I know everybody's ready for a little bit of a break. So we have 2 classes tonight and then next week's where we have material that we're presenting or we were walking through. Hey, how are you? And then we have a little break, a 1-week break from class anyways. I know just hearing the chatter, I can empathize with everyone. I always found Thanksgiving break to be somewhat frustrating because there's so much work to do. It's hard to enjoy the turkey, everything else, right? Because you're focused on getting things done for the semester, which means also that when we come back from Thanksgiving, we have just 1 class, and that's on the 5th. That'll be the class we have devoted to making presentations. We have 7 groups, so we'll just allot enough time, maybe 15, 20 minutes or whatever we think is reasonable. We'll talk about that as we go for your product concept pitches. So excited for that. We have this week we have our reflection due for this week's material. It's reflection number 10, and it deals with, we'll talk a little bit about later in the class, but it deals with value co-creation, which is a real important concept moving forward in the economy that we have today, especially. And it's really a key focus, I think, for where we'll all be as managers and owners and business leaders down the road. And consumers as well, for that matter. So, but that's the last one. The one for this week, again, is the last reflection. We have 1 more case that'll be due. Unfortunately, or fortunately, we pushed the date back on that a little bit, but it does fall during Thanksgiving week. So, we have a little more time to do that, but again, you can do it early. You can get it done early, of course. That's fine. So that's due. I can't remember the date of that. 26th, maybe something like that. That's that. Part 4 of the project is actually due during exam week. We don't meet during exam week, so 5th is the last time we physically meet. But as a group, you want to turn in that last part 4 of your project that following week. So any questions on kind of the things we're doing? I know we're just in the middle of November, but it seems like things will be wrapping up quickly. So questions or concerns or thoughts? All right, well, obviously, if you have any, just please reach out. Happy to talk through any of this that we're doing. But no, we're heading towards the end. In fact, these 2 classes, what we're doing these weeks are, I think, a little interesting to begin with. The text talks about creating value through the marketing mix for this week. Second, next week, creating value through innovation. So largely tonight, the focus, and if you read the text and kind of look at that, the focus is really kind of, and these 2 weeks, the 4 Ps, functionally speaking, what types of strategies do we look like that? And think about from the 4 Ps, and when they talk about the mix, what the text is really thinking about, it deals with pricing strategies and creating prices that are appropriate for the market and such, distribution and distribution related items, and then promotion and advertising and things like that. So it's really, these 2 weeks are really functional in a lot of ways. When you talk about the 4 Ps, we really haven't spent enormous amounts of time in this class talking about the 4 Ps. I mean, we've been doing marketing strategy and how we kind of position ourselves to compete against other firms and take advantage of market opportunities and some stuff like that. Really a bulk of what this class is about. So deviating from tradition, we have purposely not really spent a lot of time on the quote-unquote 4 Ps. Next week, dealing with innovation. We'll spend a good amount of time walking through the new product development process. We'll do some forecasting. We'll look at the product lifecycle chart and something called diffusion. This week's chapter talks a little bit about diffusion, but I think it really goes better next week. And so we'll do that, and that'll wrap up the content for the class. And so I think we'll be good. We'll finish strong. Now, with that said, if you look at the elements that are in these 2 weeks of the material and content in these 2 weeks, there are literally entire courses that are devoted towards each of these 4 Ps. So we can't really cover everything, right? We have to be kind of judicious and think about just a few things that we can cover. One thing you'll notice if you look at Moodle for tonight and the little tile for tonight's material, there's a whole bunch of files. Just because there's a lot of volume that we could talk about. Now, we're not going to be able to talk about it all, but just know that we're going to spend an hour maybe talking about pricing and a little bit talking about distribution specifically tonight. This scratches the surface. So what I try to do is distill what I think is important at this point in time for you all. Okay, so again, any questions before we jump into this? No? You guys are eerily silent, quiet. I don't know if that's good or bad. We'll just see how this goes. So let's talk a little bit about pricing to begin with, okay? And think about pricing strategy and some different models that might be out there. All right, and this is a lecture that I usually do on the board. I don't do a lot of slides. I have them. They're available on Moodle if you want to look at those, at least to start with. Then we'll shift over and do some PowerPoints later. But I'd rather not have you not glass over and fall asleep quite yet. We'll wait till later, right, for that. All right, so pricing. When we do price analysis, there's generally 4 things or 5 things, excuse me, that we look at. So again, this is price analysis. And these are not in any particular order in particular, but when you're again setting price, it's a major decision. Price is one of those elements. If you think about the marketing mix, and think about all the things you do in a business or an organization, all the different decisions that you can make. Price, especially from the marketer's perspective, is something that can immediately impact your sales volume. As soon as you make a price change, information gets shared pretty quickly nowadays. And so it's one of those things we can do that's in our toolbox of activities that can stimulate, either promote or slow down sales immediately. And to that effect, if you're towards the end of the month or end of the quarter and you want to hit a sales number, people will ask, well, what do you do? What should you do? And a lot of people will say, well, let's have a sale. Let's have a discount. Let's put some type of discounting in that'll promote sales very rapidly so that we'll make our numbers by the end of this period. And that's not false. There's truth to that, and that's what a lot of folks will do. It tends to be a fairly naive approach when you think about developing and creating sales. Or you do some kind of promotion or whatever, something like that. So managing and manipulating price is something that has immediate effects. Number 2, it's something that can be done very quickly. And nowadays with our digital pricing mechanisms, we can literally change price right away. It's not hard to do. It's something that we do internally. We don't need third-party agencies to help us. You can compare this to something like making changes in an advertising campaign. Advertising campaigns take a very long time to develop, to make, to produce, to launch, and you don't see the effects for a long time, or at least a while, right? So this is kind of one of those ideas where if you want to make an impact on some of the fundamental characteristics of your revenue model, change price. Changing your price will impact it. So it's a vitally important thing. Now, interestingly, while it's one of the 4 P's in marketing, it's one of the least of the P's that we talk about. So we don't, there are out there courses in pricing strategy, but they're few and far between. They just don't exist in a lot of places. And also, marketers have historically allowed other functional areas in the organization to do pricing. I mean, we can talk about what the market will bear, what the customer's willing to pay, and we measure price sensitivity and stuff like that. But at the end of the day, it's typically not a marketer pressing the button to change a price. It's somebody in another functional area. So whether that's good or bad, it just is what it is. And so do we teach pricing strategy a lot? We don't, even though it's one of the 4 P's. It's 25% of the 4 P's. We should probably spend more time with this. So that's another thing to kind of think about too as we go. So we do pricing analysis. It takes into account, I think, 5 different things. There's typically people will say 4, but I will say 5. One will be your objectives that you want to accomplish as a result of your strategy that you are employing. Okay, and this is true with just about anything that we do. When we make any type of plan, we want to have some type of outcome. And we want to know what that outcome is going to be, or at least try to strive towards an outcome. So my pricing objective may be, or my pricing strategy may be based on an objective of increasing profit margin, or increasing sales. Those are 2 different things. Or increasing total revenues, or repositioning myself in the marketplace, or positioning myself towards a competitor or away from a competitor. I mean, there are all kinds of things that I could want to do that will be impacted or affected as a result of my pricing strategy. So one of the things we look at first is exactly what is it we want to accomplish and what would those objectives be. That will help, in some cases, determine what type of strategy you're going to use. Another thing that we look at, and again, these are not in any specific order probably, although objectives usually does kind of come up there first, we look at costs. And these would be internal costs, the costs that you incur within the organization. This is fairly important for most pricing models. A lot of pricing models are based on some type of per unit cost that you've established or you've defined. Again, we look at those traditional, cost structures that are associated like with fixed costs and variable costs. Those come back. We want to know what the variable cost is per unit. And then if we can assign a product level cost to the fixed cost that we have, then that's what we do as well. So in other words, when I produce a unit of goods, I need to know how much it's costing me to do that so that when I set a price, I'll be able to calculate my profit margin, right? And, based on whatever cost structure you have in that particular product, it'll help determine, again, that profit margin. Let's say you're a company and you say, look, I have to have at least 50% profit margin in each one of my products. Well, if that's a rule, and companies do this, they'll set a rule, they'll set a standard by saying, look, we need at least this profit margin, right, within this product or product category. And if I can't achieve that, then I have to lower costs or raise prices. So one of the 2 things. It's the only way I'm going to be able to do it, right? So that kind of, again, it has a significant meaning in kind of how you think about your price setting strategy if you're a cost-driven organization. And Most are. Most firms care about costs. They care about what the bottom line is. But again, this is one of those decisions that you can't take too lightly. If you need to hit a profit margin and you're not doing it quite now, the answer may be, well, let's just raise our price up a little bit. But we know, again, raising price is going to impact sales for the product. So we have to bear that in mind. I may be able to nudge my price up a little bit, get a better profit margin, but after all the sales are made, have less actual revenue. I might have created less revenue because the rate of decline in sales might have been greater than the percentage change or rate increase in profit margin, right? So we have to kind of think about that. Again, it's not there. So the best option typically for increasing profit margin is to become more efficient and lower costs. You are far more competitive by doing that if you can do it. But costs are a big deal. Okay. Another big deal is the market or the customers. Right. The market will bear a certain price threshold, typically. Can we charge whatever we want? We could, but the market may not pay it. They may or may not pay it. If we set our price too low, we could be leaving money on the table where customers might have paid more, but we didn't charge more. If we set it too high, then there are going to be certain customers who are excluded from our base or our market because they can't afford it or don't want to pay it. We often think of, when we talk about markets and customers, we talk about price sensitivity quite a bit. So the price elasticity of demand is something we calculate across different market segments all the time. We want to know exactly how sensitive customers are. If you go way back and you think about the pyramid concept we had for different types of customers. Remember we had the gold customers and platinum customers and iron and lead customers. And some of these customers were a lot more loyal and a lot more, they were just better customers. They had higher profit margins as platinum customers. Remember that? Going way back, it seems like a year ago, in that customer pyramid concept. Well, it also happens that the customers that are at the top of the pyramid are less price sensitive. So in other words, you can fluctuate your price and the demand that they demonstrate typically stays the same. You raise your price a little bit, they're still going to buy your product. You lower your price a little bit, they'll still probably buy your product, maybe they'll buy a little bit more, but they're not going to go anywhere. As you go further down that pyramid towards the gold and the iron customers, and then of course the lead ones, but as you go further down, the customer becomes more price sensitive. So in other words, those customers at the base, you start making price changes and they react dramatically in either not buying your product if you raise the price, or they come in droves and buy more of your product when you lower the price. They're much more reactive, in other words, right? So this is something that's super valuable to know. When you start making a price strategy, how your market's going to react. So we have to do a forecast that will kind of take into account what that reaction might be a lot of times. Okay, number 4, your competitors. Right? Okay, we all know we don't live in a vacuum. We don't work in a vacuum. Customers are going to see our price relative to our competitors, and they make comparative assumptions in what they see, and they're constantly balancing what they're going to get from the benefits to the cost or the price that they have to pay. And that's always in context to some other thing. They're comparing it to something else, right? Unless you're a monopolist and then things dramatically change, right? You don't have to worry about this quite as much. But typically speaking, we fall within what's called a selection set for most customers. If a customer is going in to buy a product in a product category, and they're not like super decided yet, or it's not an impulse item or something. If it's a shopping good is what we call it, then they'll come in and they'll have 3 or 4 different products they have in their selection set. So yours will be one of the 3 or 4, but the bottom line is they're going to compare your value proposition to that of the competitors. So part of that is the price, right? They will look at your price and they'll make some assessments of that. Okay, number 5 is differentiating features. This is the one that you won't see that often, but I think it's important. Differentiating features are those features that truly do set your product apart from others. They are the things that, if you're superior at those, allow you to charge more for your product, right? So if you have a really, really strong brand name, brand equity, you can charge a little bit more for your product than others can. If you have certain features or characteristics of your product that outperform everybody else's or are superior in some certain way that matters to the customer, you can use that as a component of your price strategy to justify your price strategy. I mean, if you don't do anything particularly better than your competitors, it's really hard to go into the marketplace and charge more for your product. Does that make sense? I mean, it's just kind of a reality out there. However, if you have some features or characteristics of your product that are clearly better than your competitors, then that's probably what you're going to use kind of to differentiate yourself. I mean, that's going to be what you'll use in your marketing, your advertising, to try to get your sales pitch, to try to convince customers that they should buy your product as opposed to somebody else's. And so this may be something that you can leverage and consider, and it could, quite frankly, supersede some of these other elements too, knowing that you have something great that nobody else can particularly copy. Okay, so as we go into this, again, if you're solely thinking about pricing strategy, how are we going to set price, these are typically things that we'll look at least initially, to help guide the strategies that we use. Okay, any questions? We good so far? All right. Let me take this bad boy off of here. All right. We're going to eventually get to it, but there are 2 primary philosophies that companies will use to set price. One is a cost-based pricing strategy or philosophy. The second is a demand-based pricing strategy or philosophy. There are 2 very different ways to think about how I'm going to set price. And we'll illustrate both of those here in a second, but we'll first put up or draw a little bit of a model that is used in negotiation strategy or negotiations. When you want to go to negotiate something, you're going to make an offer or listen to an offer, and then you go back and forth and you'll negotiate a price, right? Doesn't happen an enormous amount in our market-based, kind of retailing setting, but it certainly happens, right? And you think about if lots of consumers feel like the price is too high, then the price drops. If the market's right, if the conditions are right, if the supply is correct, right? But if lots and lots of customers are buying the product, companies are induced to raise their price, so they feel like they can. And that's just kind of this natural balance. But if it's a one-on-one deal, same type of mechanisms happen where you go in thinking you should pay a certain amount. The seller comes in thinking you should buy the product for a certain amount, and you have to kind of go back and forth and negotiate what the contract price will be. So a model that helps reflect that is something called the zone of potential agreement, or ZOPA. There's no zone of potential agreement, okay? And again, this is kind of a dynamic illustration of the negotiating process, and it has a couple really, really key concepts that, again, we don't think of all the time in marketing as present, but they are. And so it's kind of a real helpful thing to kind of work on. And again, we're going to draw all kinds of crazy stuff up here though. But basically we're going to draw a price line, like a line that just represents price. What price could be or what it might be. Okay, so this is our price line. Okay, and the idea is if the price is low, it'll be to the left. If the price is high, it'll be up to the right. Now, importantly, in this model, there are two bookmarks, if you will, or bookends, I guess. There's an upper limit and a lower limit. And so the lower limit may be here, the upper limit may be here. The lower limit is the firm's cost. Okay? And, this is a thing that, again, we talked about costs already and why this is important. Typically, again, when we're setting price, we're establishing price, we want to know what cost is. Obviously, we don't want to set a price that's set below cost. So, right, because that's generally not a great idea for a long period of time. But also, if you don't know what your cost is, you don't know what your profit margin is. And so that's a problem as well. So this blue line then is the firm's cost. And then on the upper level, or the buyer's budget, the upper constraint is the buyer's budget. And I should probably, sorry, I hate to do this, but instead of this, just do sellers. Because it may not necessarily be a firm, it could be any seller, it could be you, right? You got, how many, I don't know if any of you put stuff out there on Marketplace or, right? Try to get rid of things, try to sell things under the table, a little cash on the side. We do this all the time. So we have this sort of space. Now, the zone of potential agreement should probably lie between these 2 points, right? Now, is it possible that the seller would sell the product for below cost? Maybe, but it'd be kind of a rare occasion. I mean, that would be kind of an anomaly. If there's a reason that they would want to do that, there could be some reasons. If you're a supermarket and you want to sell a lot of hot dogs that are a high profit margin item, maybe this week you discount your buns to something below cost, and you're like, okay, yeah, I'm going to lose a little money on this bag of buns, but I'm going to make a whole lot of money on those hot dogs I'm selling. And so you kind of bundle those concepts together and you use this profit margin as a bundle, and that's your sales go up. Jimmy?
What you're talking about here is what happens every single day in an auto dealership.
100%.
I was an F&I manager for years.
You've seen the dirty.
I've seen the ins and outs and know everything around it. and so, like at the end of the month, when a dealership, they have X amount of cars they need to sell to hit certain sales quotas.
Yep.
And depending on the sales quota they're hitting, they may get on the back end an extra 1,000, extra 2,000.
The back end from the manufacturer. Yeah.
So
okay.
They, if they're close,
yep,
and they need, say, 3 or 4 cars to get there, and you're there on about the next to the last day or the last day, so don't think that they won't go below cost to get rid of those cars, because then they're going to make it back up when they get the money back from the manufacturer.
And those sales from that month don't carry over to the next.
No, they don't carry over, but what it will do, it was all the cars that sold beforehand, it bumps their money up. It bumps up to a category, so now they're getting higher profit on all those previous ones.
So there may be incentive then for the seller from time to time to consider, kind of the bigger picture. There may be other incentives that do that. You could also consider a situation if you're introducing a new product and you want to offer a product as a trial, or like a trial offer, or some type of short-term, here, I'll give you this one for free, but next time you're going to have to pay. something like that. So again, there are certain circumstances where this might happen, but again, as a general rule, the zone is the zone. We want to stay in that spot there. As you can imagine, on the other side, there's the budget for the buyer, and if you think about this, it really has to be a budget for the specific product or product category that you're selling. This isn't like my total monthly budget necessarily. This is really like, I went into the dealership or I went into the store, I was expecting to spend, I've saved this much money, or I'm willing to go up to this amount, but I'm not willing to go over that amount. Again, are there exceptions to this rule? Absolutely. If you really, really like that product, you're surprised, you go into the store, it's a little bit more expensive than you thought, maybe you'd be willing to take some money out of something else that you were going to spend on this month and put it into this. So, I mean, so just know that these are fluid. The other thing is, in a bigger picture, in a more aggregate sense, if you have lots of sellers, then these costs aren't going to all be in the exact same spot, right? If you have lots of sellers, these would be moving around. But also, if you have lots of buyers, not everybody's budget is the exact same. So again, this is on a one-to-one basis, but if you aggregate it and you have lots of buyers and lots of sellers, there's going to be some movement of these around a little bit. So, don't let that, the kind of the principles of the model work in both cases, but you just have to kind of bear that in mind just a little bit. Okay. All right. So we're cool with these buyers and sellers budgets and costs. These again, these limits that are placed. So what will happen is a price will be, this will be the price that is asked. If you're the buyer, you ask, well, how much is this? Or you go to the store, you see the price on the shelf, or you go to the MSRP on the car, and we have a price. Right? So naturally, if this is a negotiation, then you want to try to get that price lower if you're the buyer. If you were the seller, you'd want that price to be set as high as possible. That's within reason, where you're not going to scare people off. It's like one of these deals, if you're going to set price, you don't want to scare people off. You want them to become engaged in the negotiating process. So you can't set it too high. That will move people out of the market. So, if the budget is here and I set a price up here, then I'm going to exclude people from the market that could otherwise maybe even consider my product. If I'm too far over here, this could be a problem, right? This would be something that I couldn't do because they couldn't buy it. They wouldn't buy it. Do something like that. The other thing, I don't have another. I guess I'll go back to this. The other thing that we talk about when we start looking at this initial price is something called a reference price. So reference prices are prices that consumers use to base an impression on a price on. So let's say I'm going to go buy a new sweatshirt, a hoodie from the college store, and the last time I bought one was 20 years ago, probably. I'm going to go in there thinking, yeah, I should probably spend $20, $25. How wrong am I? It's going to be 55, 60 probably, right? You higher?
Like 80, 100.
Are you serious? Okay, so I'm even way off there, right? So, but here's the deal. My reference price is based on two things primarily. My experience. Now, my experience is based from a long time ago, so I'm not very accurate, right? The other thing, so there's an internal reference price. It's called an internal reference price. It's the price that I kind of have inside my head that I think the price should be. And so now the second type of kind of referencing that we do is called external referencing. where I'll actively look for advertisements or I'll hear messaging. My friends will talk. I'll hear it from you that, okay, I should be looking at $80 then, or something like that. So now my internal reference price is going to probably move a little bit because I'm getting external acknowledgments or references to what the price really should be. So, okay, so that makes sense? So I have this price in my mind, but my price is not necessarily fixed. It can be moved, right? So think about these external references though. Anytime you hear an ad, anytime you see messaging, anytime you get on a social media site and it lists a price, these are all indicators of what the price should be. And it's updating and I am constantly updating information as to what I should expect to see in the marketplace. So, like, all right, that fixed impression, my budget's up here, my reference, maybe that's my reference price, that might be my reference price. I might set my reference price on what I expect to spend, but then again, maybe not. Maybe I have a little, lower expectation of what my reference price should be. So I lower it there. But us savvy marketers know this. So if we can kind of get to you before you get into a buying kind of scenario or situation, if we could send to you messaging that will update your reference price, then your reference price could get pushed higher and higher, right? I think we can, because that's what we want to do, so that when I set that price, I want it set to as high as I can get it based on what I think your reference price might be. So this is kind of one of these things where we want to, it's like a little bit like priming. When you prime somebody or something, you're kind of sending them messages for them to kind of set an impression before you actually execute the plan. They're predisposed to have an expectation that you have designed, that you have created, right? So again, anytime you see references to prices for a product, it's probably been engineered to some extent to kind of set that or help set that in the marketplace. So we've got this price, and this is why I want to bring this up. If I see that price, and if my reference price is here, and I walk into the buying situation and I see the actual price to be here, then how am I going to feel about that? Matt's shaking his head no. You're not going to like it? Yeah, you're going to pay more than you thought, because I did a little research and last time I bought this was 20 years ago. It probably hadn't changed that much, right? So this is a little expensive to me, right? So that's kind of, I as a seller am already sort of up against it because, I've set a negative impression. Consumers expecting to spend a little less. I'm going to have to really probably leverage these differentiating features and really kind of push the idea that my product's worth spending more on than you anticipated. I'm going to have to do some work, in other words, to really get that person up to this point. And it may be this is just a great brand and you should pay more than you expect, or not. We just have to kind of figure this out. I could lower my price, maybe offer them a discount, or give them an offer of some type. If I see that they're really price constrained, they're really set on this reference price, then in order to make the sale, maybe I make some concessions here or there or whatnot, and do that. Now, the other effect is if the reference price is set higher, so maybe this is the reference price up here, then, this opposite thing happens where the customer comes in and now they're an easier sell. It's an easier transaction to make because the customer is happily surprised that this price is lower, right, than what they would typically expect to have to pay. Now, if you're dramatically lower, then eventually the reference price for the customer starts to drift down and you have some resistance. I mean, again, this price on the shelf is like an external reference that they now have. They now have a new external reference. Every time you get these external references to prices, it modifies or moves your internal reference price. So there's a little bit of give and take here that we have to think about. Okay, so all right, so we're kind of cool with that, right? We kind of got this idea of referencing down. There's actually an enormous amount of psychological literature on referencing. And it happens all the time in lots of different contexts where we, again, set somebody's expectations in a way that we want, because we want an outcome that we need to have. So all right. So let's say the price is there. A couple other components to this. There's going to be, and this is not something that we typically calculate. This is not a number that we would use, that we would calculate. But the difference between the sales price and the actual price, and actually we call this a contract. In the model, we call it a contract price when the price is set. The contract price and the budget, the difference between those two is called buyer's surplus. And again, we all love this, right? We like extra money in our pocket. We like to be able to say, look, I budgeted 100, but I only had to spend 80, right? So my buyer's surplus was $20. Again, this is not necessarily something we calculate. We don't keep track of this thing very much. But as you can imagine, the buyer they're motivated to push that price down as far as they can to increase or maximize buyer's surplus. I mean, look, if I save $20 on this hoodie, I can go have lunch at Five Guys, maybe, right? Or I can go do whatever. All right, I can save it for something else. I can buy a hat. I don't know, whatever. So that's buyer surplus. On the other side, we have kind of a similar thing. We'll call it, just because it makes sense, surplus. But we also know it as profit margin. And we obviously do keep track of that quite a bit. Right, so the difference between cost and the contract price in this case is profit margin, which, again, the seller wants to continually push that towards the right as much as they can. Right? Okay, so this is ZOPA. This is the thing that we deal with, and it kind of offers some underlying principles for how markets work, and especially when it comes to negotiating and comes to pricing, setting an appropriate price, thinking about this idea that if the price is, usually, so these two things are here for kind of a reason. There's usually a sort of a window or a zone or kind of a space that people will buy products within or between. They won't think the price is too high. They won't think the price is too low. So there's actually kind of a window here that usually we see as consumers. It's not just like one fixed thing, but being able to kind of fall within that price area. But then again, if I can build, like my brand, if I can build, kind of these differentiating features, if I don't have a lot of competition, I mean, there are a whole bunch of things here, over time, my goal is to move this up. I think I'm saying this, I think I'm right. I don't know, years and years ago, correct me if I'm wrong, Kia, the car company, Kia, well, their quality and the products weren't the greatest. The prices were low. And even now, I don't really know, but I think that they've gotten a lot better. The products and the cars are more expensive, and there's some really nice vehicles. And the price points, so in other words, over time, the perception of that car, price-wise, has gone from middle to low to high or higher, right? And no, this didn't happen overnight. This takes a lot of time to develop and a lot of time to move a product or a brand in that direction. But it certainly can happen. Of course, it can happen in the opposite direction too, but we don't want to talk about that. Okay? Cool. Any questions? Zilpa? All right, so next time you're negotiating something, think about this. Also, make sure you get them to give you the price first. Don't offer your price first. Make them. It's negotiating 101. All right, I'm going to take a little bit of this off. We're still going to use this model for some illustrations though here in just a bit. I'm going to take this off here a little bit too. Might get messy. Okay. Actually, I'll tell you what, I'm going to lower this a little bit. Give us a little bit more room. Yeah. We'll do this. We'll still keep up the cost, and we're gonna let the buyer's budget be a little bit more fluid. We're gonna move it around a little bit. Okay, so remember, there are two primary philosophies for setting price. And you can try to select a pricing strategy that sort of incorporates both, but it's a little hard to do. But at the end of the day, there's either a cost-based pricing strategy or set of strategies or a demand-based set of strategies, okay? So we have cost, and roughly 80% of companies, and retailers especially, even more so, use what we call a cost-based pricing strategy. And it's the one that you've learned in a business class somewhere, almost exclusively. In fact, in a accounting or finance class or wherever, they would probably fall apart if they had to say demand-based. But the cost-based is what you're going to see. And so we have this cost, and the idea is we want to mark up over cost some amount in order to make our profit margin, and that sets our price. That's the essence of any cost-based pricing strategy. And there may be nuances where you're using just cost over fixed, cost over variable, but the bottom line is what we're going to do is we're going to add something to this, and this will be either some type of nominal amount, but most often it's some type of a percent increase to reach whatever our contract price is going to be. So let's say we want to have a profit margin of 20%, then we take our cost, take 20% of our cost and add that in, and that'll be our where our price is. Does that make sense? So it's some type of a cost plus markup arrangement. Again, it's oftentimes or almost always used on a percentage basis, and it's just this. So we get our new contract price to that. And what you use to kind of set this is usually some type of an internal rate of return that you want to try to hit, or maybe like a hurdle rate. Say, look, whatever we do, whatever business that we're in, we need a 20% return minimum. And if we get more than that, great. But if we can't earn a 20% return, we're not going to do it. So we're not going to sell this product if we can't at least mark up 20% and make that money. And some companies will make a rule like that, and that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In spirit, anyways. As a kid, I worked at a hardware store, a little mom and pop hardware store, and this is exactly what we did. And it had to be a simple rule for a dumb kid like me to figure out. So, like the paint department, we had a certain markup on all the stuff in the paint department. In our hardware department, nuts and bolts, same thing. If it was tools, we had another percent markup for those types of products. But you walk into that department and you had the price gun, Thankfully, my boss told me what the prices should be, but it was just a % markup for each of the things. It was easy, right? It's easy to functionally do. It's not hard. So assuming you make that % decision right, whatever the % is you want to make, then that's what we would do. And if you just think about it, every time I make a sale, I will know how much money I'm making. I will know what my rate of return or what my profit margin is, right? So again, if I'm pre-planning, if I'm kind of thinking about forecasting, if I'm doing this financial planning for the future, it makes sense. I mean, there's a lot of reasons why it makes sense to do this. It's simple, it's easy, can be executed well, and so on. Okay, so that's a cost-based pricing kind of dynamic. So what we'll do, though, is we'll shift over to demand-based pricing, which is a lot more interesting and fun, I think. But bear this in mind that companies, again, they'll use this a lot. We can't ignore this because it has some key benefits down the road. Okay, let's shift a little bit. Let's talk about demand-based pricing and change this now up just a little bit more. All right. Now we don't have enough students. We don't have enough people in this room. But if we had a bigger crowd, what we would do is a little in-class experiment. I'd show you a product. It's usually, I've used like televisions before, watches and stuff like that. But I'd show you a product and ask you how much you pay for it, right? And it could be zero or it could be whatever. And on a slip of paper, I'd ask you how much you would pay for that product, right? And then what we would do is we would mark up here on the board all the different occurrences, kind of like a frequency table or something like that, where people would, if the product, let's say it's a television, let's say it's a big screen TV, and let's say, I don't tell them what the retail price is, but let's say the retail price is $1,000, and then what we do is we look at we look at what people are willing to spend in the market. Okay, and amplify this. Say we ask 1,000 people, what are you willing to spend on this product? And it's a television, and we don't tell them the retail price, but we know it's about $1,000. And then what we do is we just sort of chart how many people at what price points. And there'll be some people who do zero, because zero's way down here somewhere. But by and large, we get a curve, that looks kind of like this, and we would kind of expect this, right? Where people will spend. This cost doesn't really need to be here, but we'll just put cost down here. We know there's a cost. We know it's something, right? But typically it's like this. So in other words, if we went up and down here, this would be the number of buyers. And this down here, this axis is going to be how much they'd be willing to spend. All right, this is kind of typical, right, of a market. If you ask people how much they're going to be, some people are willing to spend more than others for this particular product, right? Some people aren't willing to spend any because they already have a TV. No problem. That's fine. They're not in the market, really, right, for this product. But if they were in the market, how much would they spend? And so we get something like this, and you'll see there's sort of this middle ground here where people sort of kind of coalesce. So a lot of the people will buy the product up here. As the price increases, we don't really need that because it doesn't really matter what this is, but as the price increases, fewer and fewer people are willing to spend, or I should rephrase that. Fewer and fewer people are willing to spend more and more for the product. And does that make sense? It should, right? I mean, that's just kind of common sense, right? That, there'll still be people in the market that don't mind paying a lot for that product. It just simply means they really want it. They really want this product, and maybe they have the means to pay for it, but they have the desire and they're willing to do it, right? Some people are less likely to do that, and you'll actually see, while it's not severe, you'll see this curve down just slightly on this back end. Okay, now the other thing that you'll notice, if you remember your microeconomic classes, they'll show you these supply, demand, price demand curves, right? That are always sloped, they're negatively related, whereas in this case sales and price are negatively related. So you see these demand curves, they always look like they're going down, right? So that would support that as well, right? All right, so here's the deal. If I'm going to set a price, what price do I set? If you know this is the distribution of consumers and their willingness to pay for a product, you know, we have a pricing decision to make. We can always assume we have a cost, and we could do a cost plus pricing strategy. We just choose the percentage of increase that we want and we set price, right? But knowing that there are consumers out there that are willing to spend certain amounts of money, we have to, you know, we may want to incorporate that into our decision. So this is where these pricing strategies come in. And there are any number of them, so we'll talk about 3 or 4 or 5 of them or something like that. And they're all ones that you're probably familiar with, but here's the trick. This helps explain why they work the way they work and why we do. They justify why we're doing them. Okay, so if we were to say, well, look, we have a lot of differentiating features. We're exceptional. There's a situation here where maybe we just came out with a new product and we don't have a lot of close competition, right? And we're not really worried about competitors. Maybe this market is just developing. So what we're going to do, this is what Apple does whenever they introduce a new version of anything that they sell, we're going to set a high price. We're going to set a price like up there. This is going to be our contract price for this particular product. Now, you're like, what? Why would we do that? Why would we do that?
Easier to move it down.
I can always move my price down, can't I? Absolutely. That's great. I love that. What else? One other big reason.
Market pays for it.
The market pays for it. There's a market there willing to pay for it. Right. So if I'm going to look at this, let's say that this is the contract price. Let's also say that this contract price is running right up against a budget line. So we did away with the budget with the customers' budgets. But let me say this: every one of these spots represents customers and what they're willing to pay. So let's just say that wherever a person is on this line, that's their budget, just for now. So right here, if this is a budget for customers that are at that point, we have an interesting situation, because remember buyer surplus and all like that. We want that line to go to the left. Well, this line is to the left for anybody situated to the right. So anybody who chose a price to the right of that line is experiencing buyer surplus, right? This is like, I would have spent this, but now I only have to spend this. Does that make sense? So this is that point. Now, in addition to this, if we have a contract price and we have a cost, you can kind of see how much profit margin we're making on a price set that high. So we've got 2 things we have to really, really focus on when we're setting a price strategy like this. Number 1, how many actual consumers are willing to pay this price? Like, what percentage of the market is willing to do this? Okay? It's the percentage of the market under the curve up here. Those are the people who would, theoretically, realistically be okay with paying that price. Second thing is we balance that with how much profit margin we're making off of each unit we sell. Clearly our profit margin is super high. Not selling a lot of units, but that's okay. Now, all right, products that are in the early stages of the product life cycle, though, you're not selling a lot of units anyways. Does that make sense? So in other words, when the product is first launched, you don't sell the product. The product doesn't sell to everybody in the market. It only sells to the people who really want the product, and it only sells to people who we call innovators. It's only 2 to 5% of the market who buys a product initially when it first launches. It then moves a little bit later to the early adopters, which opens up what? Maybe another 10%, 10 to 15% of the market. So that's really what we're talking about. We're talking about 10 to 15 to maybe 20%, I know that might be high, of people who are actually buyers in the market at that particular time. So if I'm an innovator, if I came out with a product, if I'm Apple and I come out with a new product, there are no competitors who I'm worried about really at that point, at least initially, right? I mean, nobody's copying my brand. Nobody's copying my ecosystem. Nobody's copying what I do. I can charge whatever I want, and there's going to be 10 to 15% of the market. They're going to buy this new product no matter what, because they just will, right? So why would I sell my product for less, at least initially? But I can always lower my price, right? So the skimming price strategy accomplishes this. Right? The old adage is the skimming price strategy. What you do is you set your price high, so you skim the best customers off the top, get them to buy first, and then you can slowly and gradually lower your price so that the rest of the market will accept your product and accept your price. And this is exactly what's happening. So again, remember, these are the customers who are like innovators. They're buying your product, they love your brand, they're going to buy whatever you put out next no matter what. So we'll charge them what we think we should. And then as this portion of the market becomes sold to, once they buy the product, then we can start moving this down, right? And eventually coming down to something where, and again, let's say we moved it down a little bit further, down to here, so this is the second contract price, or another contract price. We'll look at the amount of the market. This is probably a third of the market. Now we have all of these customers who have now have the opportunity to buy in that space. Right? So
I was got a question.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to damage the perceived perception of the company if they were to go down on budget? Like how you were saying, similar to like Ray-Bans, how you see it at JCPenney, it's like, wait, this is supposed to be a premium brand.
So here's the thing, and we'll I'm sure wrap around to this. Remember this area here. This is a special important area of the curve. This is where the competitive center is. So in other words, like if you said, look, I don't really want to be challenged with doing all this, I'm just going to take my top 5 competitors, I'm going to average their price together, and I'm going to price whatever they price at. It'll very likely be right in this space. Now, if you're doing this, you got to be very careful with where you end, right? So if you always stayed up here and you never moved, you'd be an exclusive luxury brand. I mean, and you'd have a different curve. The demand curve would actually be different for your product. Because they're shaped differently. People who buy luxury products, demand curves are a little weird. They go up at the end instead of down. It's like the more expensive you make it, the more they want it, right? It's kind of a weird thing, okay? But most markets aren't like that. Most markets are like this. So what you do is you come down, but you come short of this center. And if you're short of this center, you'll be perceived as a prestige brand. It's like you're a little bit more expensive, but it's a nicer brand. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Apple products are generally, I've got to guess they're, a little bit more expensive than Android in general. When they first come out with a product, they seem, but over time, prices kind of tend to drop a little bit. but never to where they become devalued. Now, let's extend that a little further. What if we came all the way over here, instead of being a prestige brand, and we're on the outer edge or the edge of this center, then we'll be viewed as a value brand. So value pricing falls here, prestige pricing falls here, competitive pricing is right in the middle. And so it's kind of where you end up. And it's kind of that you know what I'm saying? I mean, it is really very much a positioning element at that point. If you want to be viewed as the value brand, you can't price up here. You have to price down here. If you want to be viewed as a prestige, you just have to set your price higher. Right? Does that mean as a prestige brand, you're not going to be as attractive to these folks? Yeah, it is. It does mean that. It means specifically that. But that's what makes you a prestige brand. You're aspirin. You're something that you are a brand that these folks would like to be able to buy someday. But today they just don't feel like it's in their wheelhouse. Or maybe they will on occasion, but only occasionally, right? Something like that. All right, cool. Good so far? All right, so that's one way we can think about like pricing. The opposite. Let's talk about the complete opposite. The complete opposite is like a totally different philosophy. It's the penetration pricing strategy, right? So the penetration pricing strategy says, and again, there's a cost line here somewhere, but penetration pricing strategy would mean we're pricing down here somewhere initially. So we'll do a good old line right there. And that's, again, a contract price for a penetration strategy. Now, this is a little bit of different, right? This is a little bit of the opposite. In the sense that when you set price down here, eventually we're going to raise price. We're not going to stay down here forever. We're going to introduce the product after the first 2 or 3 months. We're going to start ramping it up after customers have bought 1 or 2 cycles, right? So I bring the customers in with a lower price. This is a new product. It's probably in a product category that's very, very competitive. Like I have lots of competition, or I'm in here and whatever product I'm introducing could be duplicated or copied very quickly by my competitors. Like I don't have a sense of exclusivity with my product. I introduce a new product, but 6 months from now, my competitors could easily copy me. And so I don't have a long time window here for me to capture the market. So for a pricing strategy, I'm going to use that to capture the market. And my goal here, so you have to kind of sort of ignore the blue a little bit, I guess. But now it's kind of this opposite where I enter this market, we're going to have lots of squiggles and lines going on all over the place. If I go with red only, everybody can at least afford this product. I mean, it's everybody in the market, not everybody, but 80-90% of the people are eligible to at least buy this product. And again, don't forget that like I'm an individual buyer, I might be here, that again is my sort of budget, right? Or I'm here, or I'm here, or I'm here. Wherever my budget is, this line is going to be to the left of my budget. So I'm always going to have buyer surplus for a good portion of the market. Okay, so the strategy then is I want to try to capture as much market share, as much of the market as I can. I want to try to sell this product like crazy, build up a customer base, build up a consistency or a routine where people are regularly buying this product. I want to be viewed as the pioneer, the leader, the originator. This is the one that people are buying. And then as we go, we're going to creep this price up, and we're going to set a new price eventually that's higher, where I'm capturing more revenue. So again, kind of think about this the opposite way. If we had a keep erasing my cost line, so I keep moving this chart. But if I had cost there, and instead I have this pricing strategy, my original margin is going to be so much less, right? My margin is going to be much smaller, but I'm selling more units. So again, how much of the market, what percentage of the market is eligible to buy this product, the price that I'm offering, and what's my profit margin associated with that price? It's two things we have to kind of balance and consider. Now, keep in mind too that this is a strategy, right? I'm not doing it, for my profit margin, it probably isn't really guiding this, but the idea that I want to capture market based on the demand curve is right. This is a demand-based pricing strategy because it's based on the demand curve, not based on cost, not based on anything else. It's like what percentage of the market will buy the product from me. Okay, so isn't it crazy? It's like a fantastically awesome model. I love it because it kind of like you can just look at it, you can just think about different pricing areas that you could look at, kind of what you might want to do with them and how you might want to manage them. So as we kind of talked about, if we know that there's sort of this grouping, this kind of big middle area here, then if I were to assign a price that was in the middle somewhere here, it's very, very likely that this is going to be right in the middle of all my competitors. So if I want to just be like everybody else, if I don't want to kind of do anything too tricky, but I want to just be considered as the in brand or whatever with everybody else, this is a legitimate strategy. It's a competitive, direct competitive pricing strategy where we take the average of our top competitors' prices, we fix our price to whatever that is, and we're going to be viewed in that grouping. Again, if I price a little to the right or a little to the left, then we've got the value pricing to the left, and we have prestige pricing to the right. Where that prestige goes or how far it goes, I honestly don't really know. I suppose there's there are levels of that or kind of degrees of that. But if you permanently set your price, in one of these areas, you've got this whole idea that is in essence your positioning statement. If you're going to be a value-priced product, you're going to be positioned as a value in the marketplace. People will perceive product quality different, depending on where you price here or there. They'll expect more here, but they should because they're paying for a little bit more. And it might be like just the brand. I mean, Ray-Bans use a prestige pricing model, right? I mean, they're not a luxury brand, I don't think anybody would say, but if you're spending $150 to $200 for an average pair of sunglasses, you're probably paying prestige. You're not paying, $1,000 or $1,500, $2,000, right? It's not in that class. But at the same time, you're not spending 20 to 50 either. Well, it's 20 to 50, and you're not spending, when I go to the beach, I have to buy the $10 ones because I'm going to lose them as soon as I go in the water, right? So there's no reason for me to have anything else other than that. So just kind of bear in mind that how you're going to be viewed in the marketplace will be largely dictated by the strategy that you choose. Okay, we're doing good so far. You guys doing all right? Is this okay? I know it's a mess. It's kind of a mess up there, but all right. We got a few more things to talk about then. Good. All right. Let me clean this up a little bit. We'll take this one or two more steps because you can kind of really do a lot with this. I think I've always enjoyed this. Try to get this a little bit better. Okay. Now, markets can be super complex. And it seems like we talk a lot about, like if we had a mass market, then we would treat everybody the same way. In market segmenting, we realize that there are various groups of consumers that behave differently, right? And so think about if we have different market segments, and on one of the ways they behave differently is their price sensitivity, or at least maybe budgeting or something like that. So in other words, you have one group of consumers that maybe are more price sensitive or maybe hit at a different price point, and then another set of consumers. One of the challenges of doing the model we just did was that it's a single price model. This is like extremely hard to do nowadays, effectively. And again, I'm going to take this off just a second, but again, if I had that curve and I had one price point and the contract price was here, then, I'm only truly satisfying one group of consumers at one budget line. I'm over-satisfying others, and I'm under-satisfying the rest. So having one fixed price is really constraining in a lot of ways, especially if you're going to use a market segment kind of approach to a market. Again, if we're segmenting, we have maybe 2 or 3 market segments that we're going to try to reach. What that means is we're going to have 2 or 3 different marketing plans or approaches to reach those segments. Does that make sense? Right? So if we're segmenting, then we're not using the same strategy for everybody. So let me throw this one out at you. This is actually an example. From college. There used to be a chain of stores called Bruno's. Anybody ever heard of Bruno's? Bruno's supermarkets? This is in Alabama, so where the Crimson Tide are. This is in Alabama. So this is many years ago, though, too. So when I was in college, there was a chain of supermarkets called Bruno's. And Bruno's actually had 4 different brands under its umbrella. Okay, so again, these are grocery store retailers. There was Bruno's, there's actually Food World. Oh, now I can't remember the 4th one. There was Bruno's, there was Vincent Markets, there was Food World and Food Max. That's right, Food Max. Now, again, in college, we all know we're budget constrained, right? Most people would say undergrads aren't flush with money. So no different. That never has changed. So when I was there, Food Max, like if you look at the demand curve for grocery stores or food for college students, it's probably down there like that, right? No worries. We've all been there. That's where I was. I know that. Okay, but let's say you're starting out after college, got your first job. Your curve doesn't look like that anymore. The shape of it might, for people who are in that market segment, the shape might look like that. But what's going to happen is it's going to shift, right? So what'll actually happen is you'll see something that looks like that. So this is like new workers, new employees, new people who are just starting their job. And if you kind of look at where these price points are, it kind of looks like this. Does that make sense? There are 2 market segments. College students and then young adults who just got a job, first job out. Okay, fast forward, 10, 15, 20 years or whatever, and you have families, working adults who are in their 30s to 50s. And you're going to have another curve, right? And that might look like that. And then finally you have the wealthy retirees who've lived their working careers, they've got lots of investments or whatever, and you've got their they're empty nesters. Okay, so this is a little bit more realistic, right? Where we have 4 different market segments, and they all have different, they're placed differently on this price line. And what Bruno's did very, very effectively was that Food Max was a supermarket that, it had really, really low price points, and the services were low, and again, that's where I shopped. It was one of these markets or the supermarkets where, they literally got a box of canned goods. They would cut open the box and they'd just put the box on the shelf. There was no work done, and the carts never went straight or anything like